Maybe this is you too. A lot of people do not like their health plan right now, and they're worried they're stuck with it. One that costs too much or doesn't meet their needs, or for whatever reason, they're just not happy with it. If that is you, some great news. There really is another choice. It's called MediShare, and it's such a great option, especially if you're self-employed, changing jobs, or part of the gig economy. Here's what you get when you switch to MediShare. First, huge savings. The typical family saves $500 a month. You also get a massive doctor network, or you can just use the doctor of your choice, or MediShare's free 24/7 telehealth option. And you get to be part of something you can believe in. MediShare is a community of Christians who share each other's healthcare bills. No wonder MediShare gets double the customer satisfaction ratings compared with typical health insurance. So no, you are not stuck. You've got a great alternative. Call now. 833-32-BIBLE. That's 833-32-BIBLE. 833-32-BIBLE.
I am so grateful for that foundation because it was 2 years later that I went to be on the Walt Disney's Mickey Mouse Club, the revision, and my family couldn't go with me. I never went back home after the age of 12. I had guardians. My grandmother came, stayed with me. My mom came when she could, but I was really on my own. But I had a very strong relationship with God. I got immediately involved in a church. You know, I had structure around me that gave me the guidelines to keep me safe. It kept me out of trouble. I don't think there's too many child stars in the 70s and 80s that are not even here today. And that could have been me, except that I really believed God and I believed His word.
Lisa Whelchel is my guest today on CIA, Contagious Influencers of America. I'm David Sams. Of course, we all remember Lisa from her iconic TV role. She was on TV in this series for 9 seasons on NBC. I'm talking about Facts of Life, where she played Blair Warner. It's probably one of the most memorable roles in sitcom history. So she's going to be my guest today. Of course, before that, she was a Mouseketeer on the new Mickey Mouse show. You know, I think the most remarkable thing that I learned about Lisa during this entire interview was not the fact that she now is the host of MeTV's Collector's Call, not the fact that she was a finalist, and as a matter of fact, she made it all the way to the Tribal Council, and I think she won $100,000 on the 25th season of Survivor. No, that's great. And of course, I learned all kinds of things about her personal life, and boy, did she go into detail about her personal life and about the incredible journey that she has been on over the past few years. She talks about her, her marriage to her former husband, Stephen, who was her pastor. They were married for some 24 years, and then she talks about her relationship with her husband, Pete, and the fact that they actually live both in L.A. and they're bi-coastal. I don't know if you call Nashville bi-coastal, but they live together in 2 different places. So whatever you call that. But now, those are all wonderful things. But here's what I found out about Lisa that just blew my mind. You can actually hire her as your life coach. That's right. She is life coaching now. So you can call up Lisa and she can be your certified life coach. Now, when I first heard that, when my staff told me that, going into this interview, I'm going, seriously? Because, it seems like everybody's a life coach now. But I'm telling you right now, after I came out of this interview with her, I'm like, man, I want to hire her. She's just amazing. So let's get right to the interview that I recently did with Lisa Whelchel. Okay, I'll tell you, Lisa, why I'm excited that you're here.
I want to hear.
My show booker gave me a little, they always give me this little tidbit sheet, and I started reading an article, and I'm like, I am so excited that you're here because I need your tips. Okay,
I'm ready. You're going on the Camino.
Yes.
Yay! When are you going?
Next June.
Oh, my gosh. Okay.
June and July.
So you're going to do the whole thing?
I'm going to do the whole thing.
Are you going by yourself or with someone?
No. Well, first of all, we're talking about the Camino De Santiago, right? Is that how you say it?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good enough, right? You know, I at the beginning of the pandemic, I lived here in the homestead by myself, and I was going to go crazy. I heard that you can't go see anybody, you can't go out, you can't go see your parents, you might kill them. I mean, it was just one thing after another, and I'm like, I took it seriously. That, like, I guess we should, right? And the next thing you know is I thought I got to get out there and start walking, and I started walking. And I started at 3 miles, then I went to 5 miles, and by December 31st, I had done 1,500 miles. And then this year, I decided I'm going to do 2,021 miles in 2021, and I'm way ahead of that.
Wow, that's fabulous.
And a buddy of mine, one of my attorneys in LA, he has done the Camino 3 times.
Really? The whole thing 3 times?
The whole thing. And he said, "Oh my gosh, you're going to do this with me now. It's going to change your life." Right?
So you're going to go with him.
So I'm going to go with him. But he said, "Hey, you know what? You're on your own, but I'll get you there." And he's telling me I'm only allowed to take a backpack with 1 change of clothes, basically.
Yeah, that's right. You want to keep it under 20 pounds, which is not much at all.
Oh my goodness. So tell me what I'm in store for. Tell our listeners what I'm in store for.
Well, you know what? I like the way that they kind of break it down into 3 different sections. And supposedly the first section is really just kind of buffeting the body. It is just, you're going to have the blisters on your feet. You're going to be getting used to walking. You'll be dealing with the sun, just all of just the body stuff. The second third is more about the mind, because it's kind of it's called the Meseta, I think. I'm not sure, but it's the part that's just kind of long days with not much to see. So it's like a walking meditation. Your mind is going to go crazy until it starts slowing down and subsiding. And then you will have a clarity of mind, which then ushers in the last third, which is about the spirit. And so that is when kind of you've just been walking this out and walking it through. It's cleared the air. It's made room for spaciousness and openness, which is where we can hear the Spirit more clearly.
So you start in France.
Yes.
And end up on the other side of Spain.
You can end up, you can even go another day to the very edge.
We're doing that.
Yeah, I recommend that.
He said we're absolutely doing that. And he's got this all figured out, so that we're going to end up with we're going to go do the running with the bulls.
Oh, really? Are you kidding? Oh my goodness, you were just packing it all in. Well, it's going to be helpful that you're going with somebody who's done this before, and so they'll be able to give you more tips and tricks. I've only done it once.
Now, why did you do it?
I did it in 2016. I wanted to take the whole year, and I've done a lot of traveling. I've done a lot of things, but I really hadn't gone inside and done an exploration and a journey interiorly. And so in 6 months' time, I did a 30-day silent retreat in June of 2016, and just went through, other than a 5 or 10 minute meeting in the morning with the spiritual director, it was we were assigned passages from the Gospels to pray and to really immerse ourselves in, which I loved. I had never explored the Bible that way before, just going deep in, and then you are to put yourself in the scripture, in the story, to the point where you can feel it and smell it and taste it, and then listen and have a conversation with the people in the story. And that really just busted open the doors of my faith, because I had 30 days, all day long, all night, to do nothing but just pray and be with God. And I was able to ask a bunch of questions. You know, I've been a Christian since I was 10. My faith has been the most important part of my life. It's been the focus of my career. Even when I was on television, I knew that was just a platform to be able to share Christ with as many people as possible. But I was raised in the church culture that has the answers. And so to have questions wasn't really even encouraged. So I had time to ask questions. And even in the immersiveness of these guided prayers, and I mean guided just in that we were given the passage and then had the conversation with the people in the scripture, in the story. So I was able to ask some questions. And in the stillness and in the quietness, some of the answers surprised me, and but I had time to kind of just sit with them and be with them.
So how did you get to the point that you said, I got to go on this year-long, how would you explain it?
I would say it was an interior journey, or an interior exploration, you know.
And what drove you to that?
There were quite a few things. In 2011 or 12, I can't even remember because it took a while. But after 23 years of marriage, I went through a divorce. I had 3 kids 3 years in a row in 90, 91, and 92. And so they were going off to college. So I was experiencing the empty nest. Right after my divorce, I did the unwise thing. I do not recommend this. Our divorce was final in the first week of March, and then a week later, I was on an island in the Philippines doing Survivor. Not in the best frame of mind to be stripped of everything and then have it filmed on television. But, you know, it really did. It broke me open in a lot of ways, taught me a lot of things. And then I went back to California. I'd been in Texas. I went back to California to start over, reinvent myself. I left show business when I got married and had kids to raise them. Hadn't really done anything since. So I thought, well, I got to, make a living. I know how to act. Let's just see if I can do that again. So I did a couple of movies and a couple of other, got some work and realized I wasn't up for that anymore, that ride. It was different, for one thing. A lot had changed in the 25 years since I had left, 30 years. And I was at an age where, producers were saying, well, we want somebody younger and fitter. And it's just like, oh my goodness, I'm just not, I don't want to spend the rest of my life on a diet and being rejected because I look my age. And so then I was trying to figure out what I want to do and who I want to be. And I knew that the answer was going to be in the stillness and in the silence and in the quiet. I'd read enough books. I'd listened to enough preachers. I knew the answers that were out there. I didn't know the answers that were specifically very personally for me. And that would require being quiet and listening. And so then I set up the 30-day silent retreat. I'd done some other silent retreats, nothing that long.
Where do you find a 30-day silent retreat?
It was at the Jesuit Retreat Center in Northern California is the one that I did. And it was a beautiful setting. They had some lovely trails to walk and to pray and to find places under a tree to just be and sit. And so it was a lovely experience. I'm an introvert, so it's not like it was that hard. The pandemic wasn't that hard on me.
But you don't get to take your phone and...
No computer, no phone, none of that.
I don't know if I could do that.
Yeah, that part was hard because my kids were all going through things. They don't pause their life, and I wasn't able to be there and be a part of it. And that was difficult.
Now, on the Camino, am I going to want to take my phone and be connected to the world or disconnect?
You know what? That's up to you. I didn't. I wanted this to be kind of more of a 38, 35, whatever day walking meditation. So I didn't want any of that. And I didn't want to listen to music. I didn't want any of that. But I will say that there were times that music was an addition. And there were times, certainly you meet people at night. It's not like I was not talking to anybody. And as it turned out, I met someone the very first night who was from Denmark, who was a therapist. And so we actually started walking together for the first part of it. And it was really perfect because it was kind of like just talking out what was coming up as we were walking.
So you got free therapy for a month.
Totally. Yes, absolutely. It was really perfect because it had already been set up with this 30 days of silence. And so it turned out to be not what I had anticipated, but exactly what I needed. Because, we are wounded in the context of a relationship. We can really only be healed in the context of the relationship. So I love the idea of going away and isolating and being alone and listening to God. But a lot of times, we are the body of Christ. We hear from God through the body of Christ a lot.
So you did the 30 days of silence, then you did the Camino for another 30 or 40 days, right? So you're 60, 70 days into this. What happened?
Well, there was a middle portion there that you may edit out of the conversation.
No, I'm sure that this is the best part.
Well,
so go for
not
it.
necessarily, but I will say this: I prepared for it, in that I kind of envisioned that the first 30 days really was going to be walking with Jesus where he walked, how he walked, when he walked through the Gospels. The second part of my journey was the representation of when Jesus, went down and confronted the gates of hell. And I went to Peru and I did an ayahuasca journey, which is the plant medicine that really does break down the ego structures that we've built to protect ourselves. And, ego structures that we build to protect ourselves are brilliant when we're children. But you get to a certain age, they become confining. They begin to smother you and make your life smaller. And yet they're really, really scary to give up because you feel like it's a threat to your life. And I'd done enough therapy, enough talk therapy, read enough books that if I was going to get to my demons that were at the very core of me, I would have had been able to get to them already. And there were just some areas of my life, of my own trauma, my own fears that were so walled in and fortressed to protect myself. But our shadow will come back and bite us if we don't face them and look at them and deal with them. And I'll have to say, I was most afraid as a Christian and as a very public Christian, I was a little concerned that if I don't actually face my fears and shadow side and demons, that it would come out backwards and I would be just another Christian that proves to be human, which there's nothing wrong with that. It's just, unfortunately, our humanity, especially if you've been on a platform as a Christian, it can hurt a lot of other people more than just yourself. And so I really wanted to. I needed help. And so this. It's. I know it's controversial, but it's a plant. I simply drank some tea from two plants that were put together.
Did you bring any with you?
I did not. And it was a horrible experience. I don't even know that I would even recommend it. I think you have to really, be desperate to be, I wanted to be purified by the refining fire.
What happened?
Well, oh man, I felt like I faced hell. I mean, there really was the first night, the first kind of experience. I went between sweating and feeling like there was fire all around me to actually shivering and there weren't enough blankets around to keep me warm. I mean, it was a very visceral experience of this plant medicine running through my body. And yet, and I wanted to have one of those, experiences that people talk about. Oh, I just, I was all experiencing bliss and on the clouds and I encountered the angel. No, did not have that experience except for one. I did 4 of the sessions, and one of them, the third one, I'll say the first one was just this coming in contact with, it was not something that was conceptual. It was all heat, cold, nausea, just there weren't words to it. The second one, I dealt with a lot of guilt. The second one, I had conversations with people that, just being really honest and kind of in my interior world, a lot of guilt came up. And so I just kind of had the conversations with the people that I was asking their forgiveness and just acknowledging. And then there were a lot of people I needed to forgive. I am one of those people who experience sexual abuse in the church. I've experienced sexual abuse in psychotherapy. I experienced sexual abuse at this session, in this ceremony, by a quote unquote spiritual teacher when I was under the influence. So I don't know what it is, but it's something that I've had to really wrestle through. And that's probably why there's such an reinforcement in my psyche. But I had to deal with forgiving some of these leaders. And I had conversations with my own children. We grow up, we do the best we can. I homeschooled my kids. They were pastors' kids. But of course, no matter what, I think we have regrets. And so I just talked to each one of my kids inside and felt like I was kind of just cleaning up some business so that I could let that go. It was a lot of letting go. The third session, finally, it was felt like, oh my goodness, the secrets of the universe are being downloaded. The problem is I don't remember any of them. But I was aware when it was happening that I could either pause and put these insights into the part of my brain that I would remember them, but that would be grasping them, and that would be ego again. Or I could just let them flow through me and know that the truth is that wisdom is always there. It's the letting go that allows it to surface, not the hanging on to it. So I don't remember a whole lot other than just this real deep sense that God truly 100% wants love and light and goodness and healing for all of us. And that is something that I can't understand with my conceptual mind. But in that moment, oh, this is true. This is actually God in all of us and in nature. And so there was something really freeing about that. The last night, I was hoping I was going to have another fabulous experience. The only thing the whole time was surrender. It was, something would come up I'd want to remember, and I'd have to surrender it. I would want to get up, and I would be overcome with nausea, and I would have to surrender. It was simply an all night of all the different ways that I would want to stand in my own strength and instead surrender and let go. And so that was the experience 2 weeks before I walked the Camino.
Now, was this 4 days in a row?
This was 4 out of 6 days.
And did you do this with anyone? Or
You know what? I have one of the best friends in the whole wide world. She happens to be my hairdresser. She's done my hair for over 35 years. And she went with me. She didn't drink the tea. She just didn't want me over there by myself with this kind of experience. And man, I can't thank her enough, because it was a
she's the one,
harrowing experience just inside. I cried a lot.
She's the one that made sure that you didn't end up in a prison in Peru, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And then walked on the Camino. And it was a whole nother experience that I really hadn't anticipated that it would turn out that way. I thought I'd be alone again, but it kind of, and I thought it was going to be the walking out of my faith, when, the resurrection part of the trilogy of this interior journey. And it really did. It turned out to be that on this journey, I can say I learned to recognize the Spirit of God speaking to me enough that I could trust it and then actually follow it. And I think before that, I had looked outside myself for that wisdom and direction. I'd looked into, in the Bible. I had looked at church. I'd looked in books. I'd looked in mentors. But I think I was too afraid to believe that it could come, that God could speak to me in my heart in a very personal way. And I learned to really trust it, and to trust that even if I feel like I've misspoken or I have not heard correctly, that I can rest that God's bigger than that as well. And that maybe it wasn't wrong. Maybe it was that detour that I needed or somebody else needed.
So you became a Christian at 10. How would you walk your Christian life differently if you knew what you knew then? I understand the 10-year-old thing, and I'm a PK, so I always had it in my blood. Okay, and but sometimes I think to myself, man, if I would have just known what I know now, and put that my faith to work back then, I would have gotten through so many things and so many stupid things, especially my years in Hollywood, that I would have looked at things differently. I'm not saying I would have done them differently, but I would have at least known.
Yeah, that's a great question. I love that question. I hadn't really even thought about it because my faith has changed and transformed quite a bit over especially the last 15 years. And yet, when you ask me that, I don't think I would do much differently at all. I am incredibly grateful for the foundation that I landed on as a 10-year-old. I was raised in Texas, so, everybody's a Christian in Texas, but we weren't really church-going family. And yet, when I was 10, I had a girlfriend spending the night with me on a Saturday night. We were talking about it'd be kind of fun to get dressed up and go somewhere. Not a lot of places you can go as a kid. And she suggested, well, let's go down to that church at the end of your street. We can get dressed up and go there. So it just sounded like an adventure. So the next morning we put our dresses on, hopped on our bikes, and rode down to the church. And I had never been there. I'd only been to church one other time. It was with my father. A co-worker had invited him to revival. And I walked into that church and cried through the whole thing. So I've always been sensitive to the things of the Spirit. As I remember even as 3-year-old, throwing myself across the bed and I was in love with this character, this cartoon of Jesus in the Bible stories. And that was my solace. So there was always a drawing. So when I walked into that church at 10, I have to tell you what hooked me is I found out they had been serving donuts and orange juice down there every weekend. And back in those days, we only got donuts on Easter morning. So I kept going back to church for the donuts until I realized I couldn't have put these words to it, but I just knew, this is it. This is my life. My heart had found its home, and I knew that my life was to tell as many people about Jesus as possible. And even though I was terribly, terribly shy, I went back to school and just said, hey, if you don't know Jesus, meet me out on the playground and I'll pray with you. Started a little Bible study in the cafeteria. So that foundation not only gave me I didn't have a very involved father, so my Heavenly Father was a very practical parent to me. I knew God loved me and I trusted Him. So everything I learned in church, I obeyed because I felt that this was in my best interest. And so I am so grateful for that foundation because it was 2 years later that I went to be on the Walt Disney's Mickey Mouse Club, the revision, and my family couldn't go with me. So I never went back home after the age of 12. I had guardians. My grandmother came, stayed with me. My mom came when she could, but I was really on my own. But I had a very strong relationship with God. I got immediately involved in a church, and I had structure around me that gave me the guidelines to keep me safe. It kept me out of trouble. I don't think there's too many child stars in the 70s and 80s that are not even here today. And that could have been me, except that I really believed God and I believed His word. And I was I was in community. And so I don't think I would do anything differently. I think I would raise my kids differently as far as around the faith. I think I would give them more room to have their feelings rather than just act right. I think I would give them more room to express quote unquote ungodly emotions and then actually maybe have to teach them a moment afterwards, but an accepting of their humanity rather than a cutting off of their humanity. I think I think I would allow myself to show a little bit more of my humanity. I think I was so afraid of being a bad witness that, I was a goody two-shoes and I was scared to do something wrong, but I was also not really forthcoming with some of just the normal things that you go through as a teenager, as a young adult. I kept that hidden in order to protect my testimony. And I think that that's actually quite pharisaical, when we pretend to be something we're not. That's hypocrisy right there. And yet I was doing it in the name of being a good witness, but I think I would love to have had a little bit more confidence in God's love and to acknowledge my own frailty as a human and not try to be super Christian.
How did a shy little girl from Texas end up in Hollywood on the Mickey Mouse Club?
Well, it was the shy part was a catalyst. I was in the second grade and I was so shy that I would go out on the playground and bring a book, or I'd stay in and help the teacher. And my second grade teacher had a parent-teacher conference with my mom and just said, hey, I'm a little bit worried about Lisa. She's so shy, and I'm worried she doesn't really know how to interact with other kids. And maybe you can do something to help her come out of her shell. And so it was that summer that my mom signed me up for a bunch of classes, and one of them was an acting class. And I loved it. And I loved it because I really was afraid of myself. I was afraid I was going to do something wrong or say something wrong or feel something wrong. And yet, as an actress, I could inhabit all these characters that would do and act and think and say things that I would never let myself do in real life. But it was like this freedom to actually be every spectrum of humanity. And it was a kind of a protection. And even one of my very favorite parts was I played Toto in The Wizard of Oz when I was 11, and I was in a full-bodied dog suit. But because I tried to stay small and invisible in this dog suit, I had to do everything large to convey the emotions of the dog. And yet I was protected because I was covered up in this suit. And it just kind of gave me the freedom to be big in a way that was protected. And I think acting has been that for me in a lot of ways.
Was that your first acting job?
My first acting job was at that little summer program my mom signed me up for, and I played the lead character as a child, and apparently she was a brat. So I got to stick my tongue out and throw a temper tantrum, and I thought, man, I want to do more of this.
So what'd your mom do, ship you off?
No, my mom, so I have a brother 4 years younger than me, and my dad had just started a business, so she really couldn't, I guess none of us really thought about, what if she actually gets this part on the Mickey Mouse Club.
Well, what'd you do? Send in a picture? I mean, what happened?
The truth is, I thought they were doing a nationwide talent search. I assumed they would come to Dallas, but they didn't. And so after all the auditions had already been, they'd already had them and they were on callbacks, we found out that they weren't coming to Dallas. So I had all the people that I had worked with in musical theater write letters of recommendation saying, hey, just let her, you need to see this girl. My dad agreed to fly me out there. And I wrote one final letter and just explained that I was a Christian and that it was during the time of like Pretty Baby and Brooke Shields and that other tropical thing she did with Christopher Atkins.
Blue
what was
Lagoon.
it? Blue Lagoon. Yeah. And
boy, we can remember these things.
Yeah, right. I know, right? And I wrote in, I said, I want to be an actress, but I'm primarily a Christian, and there's not a lot of places that I feel like I could be both, except perhaps Disney. And would you give me a chance? So they actually called me one night in my home phone number and said, yeah, if you can get out here next week, we're on callbacks. I didn't find out until probably, 15 years ago. Apparently, Courtney Love was on the Tonight Show and was saying that she had gotten a call back, was in the finals for the new Mickey Mouse Club, but then some little girl from Texas came in and got the part. And then she said, now she's on some television show or whatever. So apparently that's what happened.
Isn't that something? Oh my goodness gracious. So you did the Mickey Mouse Club for how long?
That was 2 years.
2 years, right.
Mm-hmm. And then I stayed out there and had an agent and did some, some movies and some guest stars.
12?
I was, 12.
Did you have an apartment or what? I mean,
yeah, I had an apartment, and my grandmother started coming with me while I was on the Mickey Mouse Club. When she could. I had college graduates that were just kind of guardians, just rotate babysitting, and then when my mom could come out, she would.
Don't tell me you had a driver's license too.
No, not until 16.
So how did you go from that to Facts of Life?
Well, that was finished the Mickey Mouse Club. I was 14 and got the Facts of Life when I was 16. So there was only a couple years there where I was out there still, auditioning, doing other things, and then I got a call. My agent called and said they're doing they're doing a television show, and they want a fast-talking, naive girl from Texas. And they've actually specifically asked for you because I had just come in the week before and auditioned to replace the oldest girl in the show, Hello, Larry, who had gotten on drugs, and they were going to replace her. So they said, but we also wanted to come in and audition for this pilot. So when I got there and I did the audition, I did it, as a fast-talking Texas girl, naive Texas girl. It fit. But there was one line reading that I read while looking at the derriere of the girl beside me in a condescending way, in judgmental way. And they really loved that line reading so much that they changed the whole character to reflect that, to become Blair. But I also got the part of the oldest sister to replace her. So I had to choose between these two parts. Now, if I had known any better, I would have chosen The Bird in the Hand, the show that was already had another season picked up. I didn't even know what a pilot was. I didn't realize, oh no, this is one show. We don't know if it's going to get picked up. But I just thought the character Blair sounded fun. I guess maybe, again, one of those things where I wouldn't dare act like Blair in real life, but, I probably shouldn't admit how easily it came.
And you did that for almost a decade, right?
9 years.
Wow. That's crazy. I mean, we were out there at the same time because I had launched Wheel of Fortune, Jeopardy, and later Oprah. And it's funny because I think, okay, you were doing that, show 79
to 88.
88. And we launched Oprah. Let me see. Wheel was 1982, Jeopardy was 1984, and then Oprah 1986.
Yeah, right in the middle of that same time.
And Pat and Van are still on the air.
I know. Now that's a gig. And Oprah's not doing so bad herself.
Oh no, she did fine. Yeah, she did fine. We don't have to worry about her.
No.
So now I understand that you gave up the role of Whelchel on Friends.
Well, let me clarify that.
Yeah,
I did not give up the role of Whelchel on Friends. They filmed the pilot for Friends, and they had cast someone else as Rachel.
Yeah.
They wanted to replace that actress, and so they asked me if I would come in to take a meeting to possibly replace for the role of Rachel. When they sent me the script, I just thought, oh my goodness, this is one of the funniest scripts I've ever seen. This is definitely going to be a huge hit, and I can already tell where this is going. And that's not something that I felt that I could, that I would be able to do. And it would be in conflict with my own beliefs and morals. And I really wanted to use whatever talent that God gave me to further his kingdom, not to further the need for his kingdom.
So how do you decide what works and what doesn't work for you? Because, some people would say, well, it's acting.
Mm-hmm. And, I think I may feel differently today. That's how I felt at that point. I just didn't want to use the God-given gifts to further deteriorate what felt like the morals of the world, really. Mm-hmm. And Friends went on to impact the world, and their lifestyle impacted the world. Now, if I still don't think I would take a part like that, but would I take a part of an evil woman or of a woman who is acting out of her own wounding in ways that are fleshly or worldly? I may, as long as it's really clear that this isn't to glorify that, but to acknowledge that is a part of humanity and learn about it. And so, because I learn all the time about cultures and about people and about situations that I had no clue of, and yet I couldn't pray for the world if I didn't know, if I just kept myself in some little bubble.
So how in the world do you go from an incredibly successful sitcom for almost a decade to getting married and having kids the next year?
Well, I think I was really fortunate. I think it would be difficult to go from not only the television show, but all that goes with it. Mm-hmm. The money, the opportunities, the travel, the freedom, the way people, they're looking to take care of you, do your hair, find your wardrobe. I think I can understand how it would be difficult for someone to give that up. It's a kind of magnified the head cheerleader and the quarterback after high school go on and living a normal, regular life. I think I was fortunate in that we filmed the last episode of The Facts of Life in March of 88. I got married in July of 88, got pregnant in 89, and then I had a child in 90, 91, and 92. So not only was I really busy, but I was really busy with some really, really happy and wonderful events in my life that were even more wonderful than the season I had just come out of on television.
I mean, to just cut off the acting thing, I mean, just literally just cut it off. What was the decision that made that happen?
I didn't plan on just cutting it off. I thought I would keep working, but I got pregnant, had my first child, my son, and then when he was a baby, I filmed a movie. I did Where the Red Fern Grows Part 2. And then I immediately got pregnant with my daughter. And then 4 months after she was born, I was pregnant with my other daughter. So by the time that I was kind of ready to go back to work, the opportunities weren't there for me. And I, at the same time, couldn't fathom leaving these 3 little toddlers and being away from them all day long. I just absolutely was loving every minute of it. And so it wasn't a decision I made. It's kind of what unfolded, and then I accepted it and embraced it.
Tell me about your husband. You met him where? I
met him here in Nashville. I moved to Nashville 4 years ago.
No, your first husband.
My first husband. Okay, my first husband.
Let's not skip over the first. Did you meet him when you were on Facts of Life?
I did, yeah. He was a pastor at my church.
He was a pastor at your church.
I went to Church on the Way with Jack Hayford, and he was Jack Hayford's administrative pastor.
Gotcha.
And so, and I met him because Pastor Jack put together these affinity groups. They're kind of like LifeNet groups or, kind of small groups. But he put together affinity groups for different kinds of ways of life. And so there was one for people who were in the entertainment industry. So there were some really, big name people in this small group, but I was still very, very shy. I could be outgoing on stage, but you put me in a small group or certainly a big group, and I'm over in the corner somewhere by myself. I didn't even have phones back then. I just had to I usually had a book in my hand or in my purse. But my first husband, Steve, was the pastor in charge of that group with another, an older woman who was a pastor. And he noticed that it was obvious that I loved being there, but I just didn't say anything. And I was just really, really scared and shy. So he was also shy, but he figured, well, I can help her. She feels, it's obvious she feels a little bit uncomfortable and awkward. I can help her. So he kind of befriended me in order so for me not to feel so alone. And we were really great friends for 2 years. I had a boyfriend at the time. I wasn't, attracted to him in that way. But about 2 years into it, I will have to say that I was in a revival meeting at church, and I felt the presence of the Lord. And I know enough to pay attention when I feel that in my body. And so I said, okay, God, I'm listening. And I really felt like this came to my mind. Would you ever consider marrying Steve Cobble? And it was just like, no, this isn't God. Go away. Whoever you are, whatever. Go away. No. But that evening we were going out to dinner, and that evening out of the blue, he said, would you ever consider marrying me?
Whoa, what?
Yes. And I was like, oh, wow. Well, funny you should mention that. So it was like I had this conflict. It's like, I kind of always thought I'd, feel like kissing the guy I was going to marry. And that was not there.
So he wasn't your type?
No, he was not my type. And he was a lot older.
Right.
And I had a boyfriend.
Okay.
And so I always said, okay, well, obviously, we should pray about this. Well, he made the mistake of telling Pastor Jack that we were praying about this. Pastor Jack just jumped to, okay, they're getting engaged. If God said it, it's happening. And announced at an event that was not in our city, but Steve traveled with him. Steve Cobble is engaged to be married to Lisa Whelchel. So Steve calls me up on the phone. He says, you may want to talk to your parents before they hear through the grapevine that apparently we are engaged. It's like, what? No. And so I had this big crisis of faith at that point.
Oh, my gosh.
Actually came here to Nashville because one of my best friends lived here. She still does. Still one of my best friends. And I just I bought a book from Lifeway Bookstore on finding the will of God for your life. And I just kind of hold away to just go, okay, God, was this you? Is this you? Are you just some capricious being up there manipulating our lives for, your sick entertainment? What's going on here? And I got to the point where I just, I trust that God is not messing with me. Mm-hmm. And, I don't know how I feel about arranged marriages, but I felt like God arranged my marriage and I was going to trust. And I don't regret it. We were married 23 years. So very real reason that we got divorced, but there was also some very good reasons that we were together and had our children and raised our children, and we are still very close friends. My husband now and I are flying back to LA in 2 days. My first husband just texted me this morning, hey, what time are y'all arriving? Can I come pick y'all up at the airport? So, there's that old adage, God works in mysterious ways, and it's really kind of hard to figure out. We don't even try to understand the mind of God.
Well, that's the best way to look at it. I'm going to Aruba in a couple weeks. That's my other hangout. And the first week that I'm there, I'll be there with my 2 daughters, my ex-wife, and her husband.
Love it.
So,
yes. And it's a blessing when it can be that way. It can't always be that way, but it's nice when it can. Yeah.
So let's talk about the post the first marriage. You were married for 23 years.
23 years.
Okay. And so, how old were your kids when you got a divorce?
They were all, 2 of them were in college. One was a senior in high school. And I think part of that was that I actually kind of knew that this was probably, I found out some things early on in our marriage, but I had 3 kids under the age of 3 at the time. And it was just like, okay, well, what am I going to do with this information? I'm not going to leave the marriage. I don't want to leave the marriage. I will stay, and I will stay for the kids, and I will stay for, out of obedience to God and commitment, the commitment that I made. I also didn't want to tarnish my testimony again. That was all a recurring theme. And I think when my kids were in high school, all 3 of them, there was just this kind of voice that bubbled up. Well, you said you were staying for the kids. Now, why are you staying? And so I had a conversation with my husband and just said, hey, if we don't work through these issues, I don't think we're going to make it. And we tried for 5 years, and they were not issues that could be worked through.
So, I run into this all the time where women are staying in a marriage because they have kids who are in school or young kids. Or would you recommend that? Or would you recommend just facing the reality and...
Well, I would not even dare to answer that question so globally. It's.
Well, if you had to do it all over again, would you have done it the way you did it?
That's a good question. I will say that initial rupture early on in the marriage, I didn't think I would ever feel close to him again or even want to be. And so I would say it took a couple of years. And there really was a kind of a rebirthing of our marriage, not in a way that I had ever hoped for a marriage, but there was a rebirthing, and a lot of it had to do with it. He's a good man. He is a very good man, and he's kind. And we were great partners, and we were in ministry together, and we had these terrific kids, and that was enough. And I think I sublimated a lot of my desires through. I wrote a lot of books, and I was a homeschool mom, and so I didn't feel the void that was there, where some of the the more intimacy was lacking in on every level. And so I'm grateful for that. I don't regret that. Would I do the same thing over again? If I knew what I know today and how well my kids turned out and how solid they are and what great marriages they have, I probably would. If I didn't know, and yet I kind of know what I know today about what marriage, can be, of how my kids have taken the heartache and the hardships that divorce causes children, no matter how old they are, and yet that has tenderized them. They have, that's part of their message, is the wounds that have come from that. And then I probably, for myself, I probably would have left earlier, and I would have trusted that, God does use all things. And I think it probably would have been best for everybody involved, including him. But so that's really, it's hard to answer that.
No, but that's a good observation, and I appreciate you, because I don't know what it is. I mean, I guess I'm a single guy, so I know a lot of people who have gone through things, or they're still going through things, and it just seems like, and I interview a lot of people too, so I hear a lot of, it's like going on a thing with your therapist,
Yes.
or in your case, your hairdresser. You hear a lot.
Yes, and I'm a life coach now. That's actually what I do.
Tell me about that.
Well, that's my primary career right now, and so yes, I hear a lot of stories, and I'm always picking up on things that apply to my own life, or telling them things that I'm going, ooh, you should pay attention to that, Lisa. So I hear what you're saying.
Now, let's talk about this life coach thing, because, I hear that term bantered around all over the place. And I'm a certified life coach, and I'm a this, and I'm a that. I mean, and by the way, I know some of the most screwed up people who are life coaches. I mean,
yes, yeah, and I know some screwed up radio show hosts too.
Exactly, and I mean, but it's just crazy that this life coach thing has. So, first of all, what makes you a life coach? Why are you a life coach? And I mean, how do people find out about you?
Yeah, that was all great questions. So, anybody can be a life coach. You're right. You can just decide, hey, I'm going to be a life coach, to hang up a shingle and,
But how do you become a real life coach?
Well, I went through a 1-year certification process. It was 5 months of in-person, experiential, just workshops and that's what I love. It's the particular certification I have is coactive. So it really, really aligns with my belief that as a coach, I'm not to tell somebody what to do or even give them advice. My job is to help them recognize, trust, and follow their own inner guidance, which, I believe is, the Christ in us, it's the Holy Spirit. And even though half of my clients aren't people of Christian faith, the Spirit of God still speaks, and speaks very personally and directly through our own heart and through our own knowing. You have to kind of learn how to discern what is of God and what is not, but that's also kind of part of my job, helping them, ask them questions to help them discern that. And then I did a 6 months with having supervision, and they would listen to my calls recorded and kind of help me be a better life coach. But then a lot of it has to do with just that I'm a voracious reader and learner, and I've been doing this for decades. And so I just have a lot of resources to pull from, to be in it with somebody, no matter what they're going through. And I'll have to say that I feel in over my head quite a bit of times. If I'm in way over my head and I'm afraid I'm going to, like the thing, if you jump in to save somebody who's drowning, if you don't know how to swim, even if you do know how to swim, you can drown both of them. If I'm feeling like I'm drowning, I have sent somebody to a therapist or another coach. So I am certainly not above doing that. But what I've noticed, though, is that if I really trust that God speaks to every single one of us, if we listen and believe it, then that's my job. And I think what I learned on the Camino about being able to trust my own intuition, just my own kind of whatever. I'll bring up something if it just comes up out of the blue. I'll say it, just because it's the most creative work I've ever done. I feel the most freedom. As an actress, I had a script. As a speaker, I mean, I had messages that they were from my heart, but I would say the same ones for a season at a time. This is all in the moment, just trusting what comes up and then following it and then being surprised of what unfolds. And then as far as where they find me, I have social media, Lisa Whelchel, but I also have an Instagram account that is Contigo Life Coach. And on that account, when I do post, I post a quote from a book that I'm either reading or have read, and I post a picture from my own life that kind of associates that reading, and then what I think about it, what I've learned from it. And so, people that are interested in some of that kind of writings, whether it's all nonfiction and spiritual psychology, then they're drawn to me. We're a good fit. I wouldn't be a good business coach. I wouldn't be a good health and wellness coach. I know my limitations. I'm much more maybe a transformational coach. If you're wanting to be beyond where you are right now, or if you want to find out who you are underneath all that stuff, then I will explore that with you, that kind of thing.
So how did you decide to do this, and what was it like getting your first few clients? I mean, here you... I really don't think you're shy at all, by the way.
Well, this is one-on-one. I love conversation. And that is actually why I became a life coach. Because after I'd done those few movies after Survivor and realized I don't want to be in this business anymore. I was over 50 and I had to start over. And a friend of mine said, well, what do you love to do? And I said, well, I can't make a living what I love to do. I love to read books and I love to have deep conversations. And she said, well, I think you can. I think that's a life coach. And I had the same kind of feeling you did. It's like, life coach? Oh, come on. I mean, if I'm going to do that, I'm going to go back to school and become a therapist. But you know what? I didn't have that much time in my life to go back to school and do that. So I thought, well, you know what? As long as I'm honest about my limitations and just simply be in it for the deeper conversations and even more importantly, the deeper listening, I'll give this a try. And I did the training and then fell in love with it. And I got my first clients because I did a daily blog about my trip, the Camino. And I posted that. And so people kind of followed me on the blog about the Camino, my Camino walk, which is still on my website, by the way. And at the end, I kind of announced that I'm going to start a new career as a life coach. And a lot of people that followed that journey signed up to be some of my first clients. And I have a lot of those clients still today.
Well, that's awesome.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. So on Survivor, when you were on Survivor, first of all, how did that come about? And what did you learn through the whole process?
Oh, my goodness. Well, it came about because I had been speaking for 2 years with women of faith. No, 3 years with women of faith. And I had signed a letter with a deal memo letter for the next year to travel with women of faith. But in the interim, before I went to contract, they replaced the president. Somebody else bought the whole organization. They wanted to overhaul it. And so they didn't, they said, well, and you're not part of it. And so I had a whole year booked to speak with them, and it was the next year. Well, as you know, in speaking, it typically books out 6 months to a year. So I had all this time ahead of me that I didn't know what I was going to do with it. And the thought came to my mind, I had always loved the show Survivor. I'd watched every episode, and I always thought, oh, I'd love to be on that show. But I knew I never could be because, first of all, you have to go away for almost 2 months. And second of all, there's no planning it. You audition, and then you're on the island like a month later. Well, I never had 2 months free, or I had small kids. Well, my kids were grown, and I suddenly had the next indefinite amount of time free. So I decided to film a little audition video and put it on Twitter. And I, replied Jeff Probst and CBS. And I said, hey, I want to be on Survivor. Give me a chance. This is my audition tape. And the casting director saw it and called me up and flew me out to California. I was in Texas at that point. And I auditioned for Survivor. And part of the audition, it's physical, but they also do a battery of psychological tests. And the psychologist on there told me, so this proves it to you. I wasn't answering with this in mind. She said, we wouldn't typically put you on the show because it's obvious you're really shy. All of your answers, you're not going to speak up, and you're cautious, and you're not going to, make a big deal about stuff. And that doesn't make for good television. But since you're a celebrity, we'll go ahead, and you want to do this, we'll go ahead and put you on. And so, at the end of that week, they gave me probably 20 different shots and said, pack up. You're getting ready to be on Survivor in a few weeks. And what did I learn? Oh my goodness. It was really hard. It was really harrowing in that.
Now you didn't win, but
I didn't win. No, but I tied for second place.
Yeah. I mean, you almost won.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. And the woman who won deserves it. I did not deserve it either. Because it just messed with me because I wanted to be a good reflection of Christ. I wanted to, I knew people knew me as a Christian, and I didn't, and yet this game requires you to lie and backstab and betray. And so I was in terrible conflict because to win the game, I'd have to do all that. But then I was afraid that I would lose my testimony. And so I was just it was very hard. I felt like I was drawn and quartered and split in two.
Not to mention this was right after your divorce.
Exactly.
Right?
So I was already just a basket case. And as it turned out, my brother, who is a pastor, I just so respect him. I adore him as a man of God, as a husband and a father. And he's 20 years younger than me. He's a half brother. So when it came to the family visit, I had asked him to be the one that comes to visit me on the island. So I made it out there. And he saw that I was in a very bad place. I just disintegrated when I saw him and cried and cried and cried. And we went out to the ocean and he just said, Lisa, sis, this is a game. This isn't real life. Everybody knows the rules. Everybody who's watching it knows it's a game. Play the game. You can be a Christian and play the game. Nobody's going to expect you to be, how you would be in everyday life. Now get out there and win this game. And so I guess I just needed that permission. I respected him. I knew he understood my dilemma. And yet it was true, And when I look back on it, I think it was another way that I found a way to let my darker side come out in a way that was acceptable, not unlike being an actress. I wouldn't consider, in real life, doing something just for money or prioritizing, making money over somebody else or betraying or lying or backstabbing. And yet those parts are in all of us. And they get pushed away into, this little room that's cut off that unfortunately the back door opens and sneaks out every once in a while. And I mentioned I was afraid of that. And I found a way to let all those parts of me come out with permission. So as hard as it was actually really, really good because I think I didn't win the $1 million, but I did come away with the ability to acknowledge that I may have acted good all my life. And I don't mean acting as an actress, but as in just doing the right thing, saying the right thing. I was so careful about even thinking the right things that I would never consider, it would be too scary to consider that all those other thoughts and feelings and cravings and desires and woundings, they're all in there. They were just really well hidden. So for them to come out on, on television and realize, oh, this is how we connect with humanity. it's kind of like I wrote a book about friendship called Friendship for Grown-Ups. It was learning about friendship as a grown-up. And it was a very similar thing. I thought that I needed to be perfect and wonderful and desirable for somebody to want to be my friend. What I learned was that's more like Teflon. It's shiny and it's, polished, but nobody can connect to that. That real friendship and real connection is more like Velcro. There's the holes in there. It's kind of loopy and it's got collecting some dust in there. But that's where you connect with somebody and where you can really, it holds fast because that's where the most vulnerable parts of us are.
Wow. So here you are in Nashville. How'd you end up in Nashville? How'd you end up with a second chance with marriage number 2? Tell me about that love story.
Yeah, well, it's also all comes back to the Camino again, really. We started there, yes, because this therapist that I met on the Camino, we only walked together for 3 weeks and then he went back to Denmark. But we had, we talked all day long, every day for 3 weeks, the deepest parts of our lives. And so it was an immersive relationship, and that I thought, wow, I would, now this is the kind of intimacy emotionally, mentally that I want to experience. So my plan was to go to Copenhagen and live there for 6 months and write the book about my interior journey. So we kind of dated and went back and forth for a while, and then before I was supposed to go over there, we broke up.
Hold on. You dated
long distance. He'd come to California. I went to Copenhagen.
Wait, this is the guy on the Camino?
On the Camino.
Oh.
Yes, a Camino romance.
Now I'm putting it all together.
Be careful. It happens. And it's easy to happen because you really do just walk and talk.
Okay.
And then you get in a hostel with, 15 other people in bunk beds, and you wake up before dawn and you go walk and talk again. So after we broke up, I had already told my son and his girlfriend that they could have my apartment while I was gone. And so I'd packed up my things, and then we broke up and I had no place to live. I had been invited by a friend. Actually, Donald Miller had invited me to do one of his retreats, his kind of a story brand retreat. Mm-hmm. And I went ahead and came here to do that. And I thought, well, you know what? I have actually more friends in Nashville than I do in California or in Texas. I'll just move to Nashville. Also, after the Camino, after the breakup, I spent a month at Milestones, which is a treatment center right outside of Nashville. It's for treating trauma. It's like if somebody is in drugs and alcohol, they will go to a rehab to get cleaned out of that. But that just stops the behavior. It doesn't treat the trauma that prompted it. And so this is a place that is all about, let's get to the core. So all my core was just all out there between Survivor and my interior journey and this breakup. So the breakup is what just triggered all the abandonment issues. So I went for this month, did some deep trauma work. And then the owner of Milestones, his name is Miles Adcox. When I came to Nashville to just be with community, I stayed with he and his wife for a few days. And I said, hey, I'm going to be here. I'm going to write my book here. I was going to write it in Denmark, but now I'm going to write it in Nashville. I'll be here for 6 months. If you want to fix me up with somebody, I've never really dated. I was just never a dater, a serial monogamous. Then I got married. And so I said, I'll be here 6 months. I'm going to learn what dating is like. So he called, who is now my husband, that night, and he's a psychologist too. I do have a type. Apparently.
You really love this build-in therapy thing, don't you?
I do. Save me a lot of money. And so he wasn't dating anybody at the time. So we started texting.
No, but this is the guy that you went on the Camino with.
No, this is the guy that Miles Adcox fixed me up with here in Nashville. He's also a psychologist.
Gotcha.
That was a therapist. He's a psychologist. So I upgraded. Right. I got a degree in this one.
Yeah, I got to keep the
Yes.
These guys trade. So go.
Yes,
go
upgraded
ahead.
in a million ways. But we started texting, and I could tell right off the bat, oh my goodness, I like this guy. He was funny and deep, but not just navel gazing. He had a broader understanding of spirituality than I did. So I learned a lot from him. And this was all just from texting. And then we met, and the attraction just was not there. And I thought, oh no, not this again. But I just thought, I don't care. I want to be this guy's friend. I'm only going to be here 6 months. He kind of felt the same way. She's probably not going to be here for 6 months, but I still want to be her friend. And that's what we were going to do, just be friends. And then 4 years later, I'm still here. We're married. And I'm so thrilled. I really feel like one of the things in Peru is I've always been afraid to admit this to God. I've always said to God, I want my relationship with God to be bigger than anything else. I want to experience union with God in this lifetime more than I want anything else. And I had to actually dare to say to God, you know what? Before I die, I actually want to know what marriage was designed to be. I want to experience that. And not that it means I would want that more than my relationship with God, but I had not even dared to say I wanted anything more, not more than, but that I wanted something, like I wanted to experience something before I experienced real union with God. And this has been an answer to my prayers. It's been wonderful.
You really believe in second chances.
Oh, 100%. I believe in second chances. And and yet I don't believe the first chances were wrong. I believe I don't know, I'd even go so far as to say I don't believe there's very little looking back that we should judge as wrong. I think, when Jesus says not to judge, one of the things I learned on my silent retreat, I was asking some questions of God, and it never dawned on me that in the story of creation, that it wasn't the disobedience, the eating of the apple that brought the division. It was the tree, eating from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. That's what brought the separation. That's what brought sin into the world, because we were never supposed to judge between good or evil. That's always supposed to be God's job, not ours. And the minute we start saying something's good and something's bad is the minute we start playing God. And so I'm one to be really hesitant to call anything good, bad, God, evil, whatever, because I do believe that darkness and light are both in God and both used for His glory.
So for somebody out there right now who's really that shy little girl or facing their fears, what do you recommend to them to get to the other side of that? Just do it?
No, I would say the opposite. One of my favorite phrases, and the client I had right before this is I was walking through some acknowledging and feeling some of the things that she couldn't feel as a child. She wasn't ready for it. And so I was trying to walk with her to just open to it. And she got really, really scared and said, I can't do it. And I said, that's all right. I said, don't do it. Pay attention to that. Don't override it. Go only as fast as the slowest part of you is ready to go. And I believe that. I think that we can trust. I did a lot of just do it, a lot of overriding, a lot of pretending, a lot of, acting a way that I actually didn't feel because I felt like that I should. What would Jesus do? Okay, well, then I'll do that. And that kept me out of a lot of trouble. And I'm grateful for it. And there's blessing for it. But it's not authentic. And I never knew grace until I allowed myself to actually be fully human. And fully human is messy, and it's not a very good testimony a lot of times. But it's in the falling that I actually experienced what it felt like to be caught and held by grace. And now I think if I were to guess what the one thing God wants for us, it's rest. It's what He wanted the children of Israel to lead them into rest. It's what Jesus said He was leaving us, peace. It's in the stillness and the silence that we most actually know God, be still and know that I am God. And we can't do that when we're working so hard and striving so hard. It's when we relax and rest and then we're caught and held that we can experience intimacy with God and being known and know God. So I would say just relax and be who you are and trust that you are loved and held every step along the way.
Well, Lisa, it's been great having you. This has been fun.
Well, thank you for having me.
I feel like I have my own tour guide now on the Camino.
Yes. Well, I hope you post on Instagram or whatever so I can follow your journey.
I will. I'll do that. And I really appreciate the time. And do you live close to me here?
I do, yeah.
Right around the corner.
Right around the corner, yes. Not very far at all.
It's amazing, isn't it?
Yeah.
I'm surprised I haven't run into you down at Publix or the Lowe's or something. You know?
Yeah. Well, I go to my local Publix, so it's not not right here.
Well, thanks for stopping by the homestead. And, man, let's have a great year ahead. And
next year, we are actually going to be dividing our time between LA and Nashville starting at the beginning of next year. I have a granddaughter and another one on the way. So it's a new season that's going to be opening for me too next year.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa, and thank you for the work that you do with Rescue Freedom, an organization committed to ending sex slavery of women and children. Boy, I'll tell you, this woman is remarkable. I love how she credits her faith for her success and for just being a stand-up human being. So, Lisa Whelchel, thank you so much, and we really do appreciate you. And check out our show on Me TV, Collector's Call. Check her out online. She has her own website at lisawhelchel.com. And if you want to hire her as a life coach, you can contact her right there through her website. I guarantee you, it'll be a remarkable journey for you. So please do so. This is David Sams. This has been CIA Contagious Influencers of America from the producers of Keep the Faith. Hey, please do rate and review us and tell all your friends about us, okay? We would really appreciate it. And go out there and live that life in living color, because it sure is a heck of a lot more interesting than living it in black and white. We'll see you next time.